Former President Donald Trump said this about Speaker Johnson, quote, "We have a majority of one, okay? It's not like he can go and do whatever he wants to do." What do you think of his take?
I mean, I think that he holds the exact same sentiments. And I think President Trump had actually seen a podcast that I did with Representative Gates on his show Firebrand, where we actually discussed this. And again, I wouldn't put it past some of my colleagues who are making only $175,000 a year to say, maybe a lobbying position looks good at maybe double or triple that amount. Maybe I should resign early in an effort to, I think, further their own careers doing something that's not exactly good for the American people.
It feels like there's a fracture in the Republican Party right now, especially when it comes into the House. Those who voted for the aid package saying they have confidence in Mike Johnson's leadership, they think he really was a leader. And then the camp that you're in, where you feel almost like he sold you out a bit here. Do you feel that divide in conversations with your colleagues?
I think that there is a massive divide, but I don't think it just stops with the foreign aid packages. I think that it's a fundamental ideology that's really, I think, infiltrating, taking over the GOP right now. So you have people like myself who are not from Washington, we're not career politicians, and we're not individuals who are funded by special interests. And then you have my other colleagues who are essentially the lobbyist mouthpiece that will basically advocate for special interests that ultimately hurt the American people. And when you have individuals that are saying that Johnson is really doing great by sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, and yet we have some of the highest inflation ever recorded, the economy's in the crapper right now, excuse my language. And then you have, let's take for example issues of student loans or the fact that there's veteran homelessness, all of these issues, and yet they're still finding reasons and ways to advocate for Ukraine funding. Meanwhile, lying to the American people. I mean, take Taiwan, for example. They said that that funding would go to Taiwan, right? Wrong. They wrote in a loophole to where they could actually allocate all of that funding we're giving to Taiwan, to Ukraine. So I think that it's just a disingenuous and dishonest argument. But I will also say this, that we're seeing a number, I think a record number of resignations and or retirements this cycle from people who would be considered more establishment. And the general consensus is that President Trump is going to be going back into the White House in 2024. And I think as a result of that, you're seeing this new wave of candidates kind of come into Washington, but then also to take over the GOP. And I think that that's needed. So what the American people are seeing is growing pains right now. I think that this issue predates my time in Congress. I think there was a lot of bad blood, probably going back to maybe about 10 years of grudges and people that have had personal vendettas among each other in Washington. And like I told the American people, last week tempers were pretty flaring. And I think the best thing that the speaker could have done was send people home, but they didn't want to send people home. They wanted to keep them in Washington. I think that that's part of the problem. Too much time in Washington.
Where do you think the Republican Party goes from here? Because you're saying these problems are a decade old. So, what do conversations look like? And then where do you see it going? Because we're in an election year right now.
Yeah, so I think right now, again, you're seeing a lot of these more establishment individuals not seeking reelection. And I think that that's an opportunity for the more populist candidate to get in and ultimately member of Congress that advocates on behalf of the American people. So I think that you're seeing a change really occur within the GOP. But I do think that moving forward, we have to get people into office that are going to look at what's best for the American people and not what's best for corporation and or for other countries, because we are basically hemorrhaging cash, right? A lot of people my age and your age, we can't afford to buy homes right now because of what's happening with interest rate. Inflation's at an all-time high, and I think a lot of people understand that even just 4 years ago, the economy was a lot better and more affordable. And so when you're seeing people advocate for all of these things that are best for Washington, just understand that they're not good for the rest of the country. And I think that it shows that, especially with this foreign aid package, that you had more Democrats voting for it than Republicans. And so if Speaker Johnson really was advocating for the American people, why is it that Democrats were pushing it, that there was massive, I believe that they got earmarks in exchange for this, and then yet the American people are kind of left, holding the receipt for all of this and really picking up the check. And that's simply not acceptable.